Boredom feels like a modern invention. It feels like something that requires a waiting room, a delayed train, a meeting that could have been an email. It feels like a disease of comfort. So it is worth asking whether anyone 40,000 years ago ever sat down, looked at the rain, and felt that specific flat gray nothing that we all know. The answer turns out to be yes, and the reasons why are more interesting than the answer. Start with the word, because the word really is modern. Boredom barely exists in English before the 1800s. Charles Dickens is often credited with putting it into wide use in Bleak House in 1852. Before that, people borrowed the French word ennui, and before that, they had something else entirely. In the 4th century, a monk named Evagrius Ponticus wrote about a condition that attacked people living alone in the desert. He called it acedia, and he described it as the noonday demon. His description is startlingly precise. The monk becomes restless, he keeps looking out of the window, he checks the position of the sun to see how long it is until he can eat. He starts thinking that other places would be better, that his work is pointless, that time has slowed down. That is written 1600 years ago, and it is a perfect description of a Tuesday afternoon. So the state is old, much older than the word. And we can push it further than humans because animals appear to experience something like it too. There is a study on mink kept in barren cages compared with mink in enriched ones. The animals in empty cages were far more eager to investigate anything at all that was offered to them, including things they normally avoid. They were not just understimulated, they were actively hungry for stimulation, which is exactly what boredom is. And that gives us the definition psychologists now use. Boredom is not simply having nothing to do. It is the unpleasant state of wanting to be engaged and being unable to engage. You can be bored while extremely busy. That is why a boring job is worse than an empty afternoon, which means boredom is not laziness. It is a signal. Your attention is a resource, and boredom is the alarm that goes off when that resource is being wasted. It pushes you to go and find something better. It is, in other words, an engine for exploration. So now the real question. Did ancient people have the free time to be bored in the first place? Here's where the popular picture is just wrong. The image of prehistory as a desperate scramble for survival, every waking hour spent hunting or starving, does not match what anthropologists actually measured when they went and lived with foraging groups. In the 1960s, Richard Lee ran careful time studies with the Jew hoansi in the Kalahari and found that adults spent somewhere in the region of 20 hours a week on getting food. Marshall Sahlins took results like these and coined a deliberately provocative phrase, the original affluent society, meaning not that they had a lot, but that their wants were satisfied with relatively little work. Later researchers pushed back and found higher numbers when you count food processing, tool repair, and childcare, which is fair, but even the higher estimates leave something like half the waking day unaccounted for by work. Then add the parts nobody counts. It rains for a week. It is the dry season, and there is nothing to track. It is dark for 12 hours, and you are inside a shelter with the same 8 people you have known your entire life. That is a lot of empty time. So what did they do with it? The single best answer we have comes from a study by the anthropologist Polly Weissner, who did something clever. She had recorded hoansi conversations, and she separated them by time of day. Daytime talk was practical and often sharp. Who is not pulling their weight? Complaints, arrangements, disputes, land, food. Roughly a third of daytime conversation was criticism or complaint. Nighttime talk around the fire was almost entirely different. About 80% of it was stories. Not gossip, not logistics, stories about people, journeys, ancestors, animals, things that happened to somebody's grandfather. Think about what that means. The same group of people, the same day, and firelight flips the mode of conversation from managing each other to entertaining each other. The evening was not filler, it was the cultural machinery running. And the boredom shows up everywhere else too, in the objects once you know what you are looking at. There are flutes made from bird bone and mammoth ivory from caves in southern Germany, around 40,000 years old, with finger holes carefully spaced. Somebody had time to make a musical instrument, and enough spare hours to learn to play it, and there were people willing to sit and listen. There is jewelry far older than that. Perforated shell beads over 100,000 years old, carried inland from the coast, drilled, and strung. There are pigments ground and stored. There are handaxes so large and so finely worked that they were probably never meant to cut anything. None of that is survival. All of it is what people do when they have hours to fill and a need to fill them. Now the uncomfortable part. In some ways, their boredom problem was worse than yours. You have never in your life experienced 12 hours of darkness with nothing to look at. You have never had a week of rain with no book, no screen, no music you can summon, and no possibility of leaving. You have never lived somewhere the same 8 faces are the entire available social world, permanently. That is a serious amount of empty time to survive psychologically. And I think it explains something. It explains why every single human culture we have ever recorded has stories, songs, dances, jokes, games, and decoration. These are not luxuries that appeared once we got comfortable. They are the tools we built to get through the hours. So yes, ancient humans were bored, almost certainly more often than you are, and with far fewer ways out of it. And that is exactly why they painted the caves. Boredom is not the thing that happens when culture stops. It is the pressure that made culture in the first place. Every flute, every story told at a fire, every pattern scratched into a piece of ochre is a record of the same thing. Somebody with time on their hands and nothing to fill it with, deciding to make something.